president up here! I voted for you! Wait a minute. That guy on the grassy knoll's got a gun. He's gonna shoot the president. Holy smokes, I've gotta do something. All right, Lee. Time to become an American hero.
22 November Network, Indianapolis Media proudly present to you the Lone Gunman Podcast with your host, Rob Clark, where research comes to shine and myths comes to die. Stay tuned, be right there.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode number 98 of the Lone Gunman Podcast. This is your host, your boy, Rob Clark, at the helm of the ship. Today, we're going to be talking about some tramps, some hobos, some bums. Now, everybody that's looked into the JFK assassination has had to have had their attention drawn to these three mysterious figures photographed being arrested and led through Dealey Plaza at one point or another. I believe they were first brought to our attention by Jim Garrison when he showed their picture on national television on the Johnny Carson show. And if you go back and listen to the assassination of Jim Garrison, you can hear it for yourself. Now, these guys, their identities, who they are, is very much a hotly debated topic in the research community. I guess just chronologically, we can start out, when they first made their appearance at Jim Garrison, with Jim Garrison, they were used as a point to illustrate that we haven't been told the whole truth. And this is true. They weren't really investigated by the FBI or the Warren Commission. There was a lot of people other than Lee Harvey Oswald arrested that day in connection with the murder of the president. And a lot of that was kept under wraps. We got Donald Wayne House that was arrested. We got these three tramps that were arrested. We have a well-to-do oil man that was arrested. We have John Elrod, who was arrested. Bill Frazier was arrested. And on, and some we probably don't even still know about. But to get back to the tramps a little bit, what makes these guys so mysterious? Just from looking at the pictures, and everybody, you can go over to tlgpodcast.com where you can find this episode, and I will put up pictures of the three tramps. If you've never seen them before, I will put up some pictures of people who have been alleged to be the tramps, also for a point of reference so you can see what I'm talking about here today. I believe when we next see them, they pop up in a group or a book called Coup d'Etat in America by A.J. Weberman and Michael Canfield. And in this book, and I have it, and they try to identify these tramps. Now, their identification of these tramps, I believe, is E. Howard Hunt and Frank Sturgis. And I'm not sure who they identified as the guy that was first in line, the shorter guy with dark hair. I'd have to get out my book and look. But I remember they had an overlay, like a plastic overlay of the outline of like E. Howard Hunt, and you could put it on a picture of the tramp, and you could see how it kind of lined up. And I believe the book came out. I'm not even going to attempt to make a guess because I don't want to seem like an idiot. But for some reason, I'm thinking the 70s. I could be wrong on that. Probably am. So let's take a look at who these guys have been alleged to be. They were alleged to be E. Howard Hunt and Frank Sturgis. I've heard the shorter fella in front with dark hair has been alleged to be Charles Rogers, David Christ. Holt identified him as Montoya. Now, the old tramp has been identified as E. Howard Hunt, who denied it, by the way. And this other fellow who claimed to be that tramp, Chauncey Holt. And the taller tramp has, of course, been deemed Frank Sturgis. And another identification made by Holt of the tall tramp is Charles Harrelson, Woody Harrelson's father. Now, herein lies the problem when we get to photo identification. According to the arrest reports, which we did not have for a long, long time, it wasn't until the late 80s when the Dallas police files, most of them became public, and they were, the public was allowed to dive into them, that the arrest reports for these three tramps were found. And their names were Harold Doyle, Gus Abrams, and was it John Jedney? Yes, it was John Jedney. Now I'm going to read to you a little description that they have on each of these arrest reports for each of these individuals. Now, Harold Doyle states that he was with Gus Abrams and John Jedney, John Forrester Jedney, when they were arrested. It says these men were getting on a boxcar on a train right after President Kennedy was shot. These men are all, I don't know what that says, through. They have no jobs, etc. And that's Harold Doyle's. It says that he was, well, the charge is, I can't even read it, something in robbery. It's hard to tell. Let's see if we can see it better on John Jedney's. It says they were arrested in the rail yards at Elm in Houston. Same charges, same people he was with. These men were taken off a boxcar in the railroad yards right after President Kennedy was shot. They are passing through town. They have no means of support. That was John Jedney. Now, Gus Abrams says this. These men were taken off a train, boxcar in the rail yards right after President Kennedy was shot. They are passing through town. They have no jobs or any means of making a living. And it looks like a fellow by the name of W.J. Chambers was the arresting officer on all three here. And we have them being released on 11/26. So they were held for 4 days. They were let go at 9 a.m., all three of them, on 11/26 of 63. So they were held in custody for 4 days. I'm trying to figure out what that is. Covage. It's one of the charges. Covage. maybe something short for vagrancy. Maybe. It's quite possible. Vagrancy and robbery. They all three say vagrancy and robbery. So I'm not sure what exactly they were robbing. Whether they considered hopping a train as robbery back then. So I don't know. Now, a lot of conspiracy theorists have stated, that they're not convinced by these arrest reports of who these people are. You can find some interviews out there with Harold Doyle, who we might listen to a little later in the show, just as a frame of reference for you to hear. They tracked him down, I think, in the late 80s, early 90s. Had to be early 90s. And, he stated they had him in Dealey Plaza, and he said exactly what they did, and, this, that, and the other, and he said what happened, and, just from photographs of Harold Doyle, John Jedney, and Gus Abrams, to me, in my eyes, it's them. The lead guy clearly looks like Harold Doyle to me. The other two, it's hard to say because they were so much older and age had taken such a toll on them. But I could definitely see a resemblance. And I'm convinced that the three guys we see in all these pictures, I think they were taken by Jack Beers, I'm not sure, of these tramps being paraded through Dealey Plaza, are in fact the people that we have the arrest reports for. Harold Doyle, John Jedney, and Gus Abrams. To me, I'm convinced of that. Now, herein lies the problem. I'm friends with Karen Holt Harcourt, who is very prominent on Facebook and in some of the groups there, and she is the daughter of Chauncey Holt. Now, Chauncey Holt came forth in the early 90s, I believe, and claimed to be the old tramp. The problem I have with that is I'm just not convinced by the photographic evidence that it's him. He would have been approximately 40 years old in 1963. We have photos of what Chauncey Holt looked like in 1963. And I'm just not convinced that it's him. And Karen is a very nice lady, and I'm not calling anybody a liar. I just want to, before I back some kind of theory, there needs to be proof. As you know from listening to this podcast, that stories without proof, some kind of proof, just don't hold up with me. Need some kind of evidence, some kind of proof other than just a story. Stories are great. Stories are fantastic. And that's all some people need is a story. I mean, while I do fall on the conspiracy side of things, I'm not one of these crazy conspiracy theorists where I believe anything anybody tells me. I like for there to be some kind of a evidentiary primary source record of something. And people might say, well, of course they're not going to have, the documents for you to see, this, that, and the other. But there's got to be something other than just a story. And from what I've heard and read about Chauncey Holt's life is that, he led a very awesome life. I mean, he was he was a money man for the mafia. He was a trapeze artist. He was a firearms expert. He was, in the military. He knew how to fly planes. He according to him, he went to the Seals and Flaps school, learned how to forge documents. He was a very good painter. Um, you know, the man led a fascinating life, irregardless of whether or not he was the tramp in Dealey Plaza. Aside, he led a pretty cool life, uh, full of intrigue and cool stuff. The problem I have is the timing of things. We have, of course, that book, Coup d'etat in America, that identified E. Howard Hunt as the tramp. And back at the time, it was, it wasn't forensic science by any means, but it was fairly accepted by most conspiracy-oriented people that, that Howard Hunt was this tramp. And then he was in Dallas, and he was in the CIA, and they were behind it all. And of course, this is what the trial in the 80s with Mark Lane and E. Howard Hunt and the Liberty Lobby, and yes, I said it right, yes, the Liberty Lobby, the Spotlight trial. There was some focus. And let me just say this about E. Howard Hunt for a minute. I don't put much weight in the deathbed confession. I've heard that there's more to it than what we've been shown. That could lead to it being more easily debunked. As far as people that he implemented in the assassination. He himself claims that he was a bench warmer, that he was on the sidelines, that he really didn't do anything, that he wasn't even in Dallas. Now, the whole point of the Liberty Lobby trial was to kind of prove that he was in Dallas and that it wasn't slander or libel, that the Spotlight had been talking about him and saying that he was in Dallas. It was kind of up to him to prove that he wasn't in Dallas. And, that long afterwards, it's kind of hard to do. But just from facial analysis, my own, by the way, and I've got a pretty good eye for photography and people's facial structures. I know what to look for. I know about space between the eyes. I know about, people that might have one eye a little higher than the other, or the distance between the bottom of the nose and the top of the mouth, the chin, the jawline, the ear shape, the set. I know what to look for, and from my eyes, and comparing it with photos we have of E. Howard Hunt from 1963, to me, it's not him either. I think both E. Howard Hunt and Chauncey Holt just lacked the facial sagging of this older gentleman, that it appeared much older than 40 years old. I mean, I'm 41 now, and no matter what I did to my face, I couldn't pass for 60-some-year-old man. It just couldn't happen. No matter how hard I tried. So, whether it was the use of prosthetics, makeup, to me, examining the photos, there's no evidence of any of that in use. While wearing shabby clothes and maybe not taking a shower for a couple of days could make you look a little different than you normally would. All three of these guys were pretty much clean shaven. They didn't have any beard growth. The guy in front, Harold Doyle, he wasn't dressed too terribly bad. Didn't look like to me. The tall tramp, he kind of had a suit jacket on, which, I don't know. I'll be the first to tell you, I don't know what hobos or tramps would have looked like back in the early 60s. I mean, I know what they look like now. But back then, it's hard to tell what they would have been wearing. I have no idea. To be honest with you, I imagine they didn't have many clothes, and they just might have had what they had when they had money, and just wore the hell out of it. Probably didn't wash it very often, but that's just my own little personal analysis of that there, because it's really hard to tell what tramps and hobos would look like back then. People said, "Oh, well, the shoes look new." Two guys have sport jackets on. Their clothes look too clean. You can't go off any of that stuff at all. You can't. But to me, in just what I'm seeing with my own two eyes, I don't see Chauncey Holt in the old Tramp. And I could be wrong. I don't know. This is just my opinion, people. You can go look at the photos and determine for yourself. I just don't see it. I don't see Chauncey Holt, and I don't see E. Howard Hunt. Now let's get to the tall Tramp, okay? People said that it looks like Frank Sturgis, okay? Now the problem is that Frank Sturgis has never been a CIA agent. He was maybe contracted, but he was more of a mercenary than a CIA agent. I mean, you wouldn't have E. Howard Hunt, a CIA agent, working with a mercenary and working with a professional assassin. I just don't see how that relationship would come to pass, but it's hard to say. But just from going by pictures of what Frank Sturgis looked like and comparing him to the tall Tramp, while they both do have these weird kind of like dark circly eyes, to me, the jaw structure's wrong. The hairline's wrong. To me, it just does not look like Frank Sturgis is that tall Tramp. And I don't know how tall Frank Sturgis was. That could be a factor too as well. But now we get to the Charles Harrelson identification. We have that name thanks to Chauncey Holt, who identified the tall Tramp as Charles Harrelson, Woody Harrelson's father. Now, after Charles Harrelson was arrested for murdering a judge in Texas, in prison, he stated that he was involved in the Kennedy assassination. So he made the admission before Chauncey Holt made the identification. Now, Charles Harrelson never said he was a tramp. He never said that he was the one shooting. He just said he was involved in it. That he knew things. He knew people. And the man was a killer. I'm sure if you paid him enough, he would kill whoever you wanted him to kill. It makes sense. But once again, it comes down to photo identification. And I'm sorry, but I don't see it. Now we have you can't take what Charles Harrelson looks like in the 80s, okay? With his, poofed back, slick hair, and the way his face looks then, okay? We have a mugshot of Charles Harrelson from 1960. And I'll be damned if he don't look like Woody from Cheers, his son. Okay, way back when Woody Harrelson was on Cheers, you remember what he looked like? Well, if you forget, just go look at Charles Harrelson's 1960 mugshot. Now, 3 years later, okay, he wouldn't have changed very much in 3 years. He would have looked very much like his son, Woody. Now, the tall Tramp, to me, looks nothing like Woody Harrelson. Nor does it look like a young Charles Harrelson in 1963. You know, you got to get out of your mind Charles Harrelson from the 70s and 80s. Okay, and the way he looked then. Okay, he would have been a very young man in 1963. You know, we're talking mid-20s. So, to me, the tall tramp looks to be, I would say, at least in his mid-30s. And once again, I don't know how tall Charles Harrelson is. You know, so I can't really give you a height analysis there. But just from visually looking, it's hard to tell. I mean, to me, it's clear that it's not Charles Harrelson. But that's just me. Now, it is intriguing. Is it, or is it, just a big coincidence that, you have these figures associated with murder and the Kennedy assassination and the CIA? Is it just a big coincidence that they kind of look like these tramps? I mean, because they do kinda, but kinda don't cut it. Okay, when we need to pick a positive identification and be absolutely sure of what we're looking at here. Okay, now let's get to the third tramp, the guy out in front, the short guy, dark hair. He's been identified by many people as Charles Rogers. Okay, now here's my problem with that. We have pictures that have been identified as Charles Rogers from high school and right after he joined the military. So he'd have been, 15, 16, 17, 18 years old. But we got nothing after that. Because apparently the guy murdered his parents and sawed them up and stuffed them in a refrigerator. Sounds like a real nice guy. But I'm not convinced that we have a true picture of Charles Rogers, whoever this guy was. They claimed he was a bad dude. But anyway, we have a couple pictures of who is alleged to be Charles Rogers. And I'm sorry, but they look nothing like the front tramp. Nothing. As far as facial structure, eyes, jawline. Because the front tramp has a very unique looking jawline. It kind of juts out at the chin, and distinct frown lines, eyes, hairline. And I'm sorry, but the man looks like Harold Doyle. Now, I've done a side-by-side, like mirror image comparison, and I'll post it on my TLGpodcast.com website. Yeah, I think I might know the name of it. TLGpodcast.com. I'll post it up there. You've never seen it anywhere before. I did it myself, and you will plainly see that this man looks just like Harold Doyle. When you see a mirror image of these two men and their faces, it's undeniable. It's undeniable to me. Now, there was a lady by the name of Lois Gibson. Back in the early 90s, she was the composite artist for the Houston Police Department. Very renowned, very respected. Who apparently did an analysis of the three tramps against Chauncey Holt, Charles Harrelson, and Charles Rogers. And I've got a little news clip here that I'm going to read you, and you're going to hear, I'm not going to read it to you, you're going to hear Lois Gibson in her own words describe her discovery, and you're going to hear a little bit from Chauncey Holt and what he is alleging to be involved in. All right? So check this out. I'll be back in about 2.5 minutes.
School book depository. The lot was swarming with faces he knew from days when he worked to help set up the CIA's Bay of Pigs invasion. And, he says, he met two other men, the other tramps in the photograph. This man he knew only as Montoya. But this man, he says, he knew well. His name was Charles Harrelson.
He said to me, "Are you O'Malley?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "I'm Harrelson."
Charles Harrelson was a contract killer, now in prison for killing Texas federal judge John Wood. When arrested for Wood's killing, Harrelson claimed killing a judge was nothing to someone who had killed a president. Chauncey Holt says he'd been told to stay in the book depository parking lot, wait for some sort of incident, and if anything went wrong, he should run to a specific boxcar on a parked train. Then he heard shots and ran.
You could still hear that people yelling that the president had been shot. So I knew that we had been set up.
And there is more than just Holt's word. There is also his face.
It's just too close.
Lois Gibson is the Houston Police Department's forensic artist. She made comparisons of Holt and the tramp in the photographs.
This is just conclusive to me that that's the same man.
She also compared pictures of Charles Harrelson with the tramp photo. Again, a perfect match.
I'll stake my reputation on it for sure.
Chauncey Holt does not claim to know who shot Kennedy, but he says he is sure most of the shots did not come from the book depository, but came from close by, from the grassy knoll.
If I am believed, it would lay to rest these ideas that Jack Ruby and Lee Harvey Oswald were just nuts that passed in the night.
We've been researching Chauncey Holt's story, talking to scholars, ex-CIA agents, and many others. Some say Holt's story is bunk, but others believe him. And all admit that if he is a fake, he's not just a wacko. He is playing either a well-schooled, elaborately detailed role, or he's telling the truth.
It's intriguing.
Have you talked to Charles Harrelson about it?
We have not talked to Charles Harrelson yet. He is currently in Marion, Illinois, in the federal penitentiary. We are in the process of asking for permission to talk to him.
Has anybody corroborated this story that he's telling?
A number of individuals that we've spoken to have corroborated little bits and pieces of it. One of the problems is the story that he tells is so detailed it goes all the way back to 1941 and carries on all the way through the 80s. The Kennedy portion of the story that he tells is just a very small part. Of course, it's the most important right now.
Fascinating.
Now, you just heard Lois Gibson saying that she would stake her reputation on her identification of these three tramps. And you also heard Chauncey Holt positively identify Charles Harrelson as one of the shooters. And if he is to be believed, he says. Now, I've watched the presentation. There's a presentation on YouTube. It's like, I don't know, half hour, 45 minutes long, of Lois Gibson going into very, very elaborate detail of how she came to her decision of identifying these men as Chauncey Holt, Charles Harrelson, and Charles Rogers. And I would encourage everybody out there to watch it. I'll put a link up on tlgpodcast.com of that presentation, and you can decide for yourself. Personally, you know, while Lois Gibson might be a respected sketch artist, I think it's a very special skill to be able to recreate from someone else's memory a sketch of a suspect or perpetrator that matches what the person is telling you. I think that's a very special skill, and one that, you know, somebody like that could specialize in and be good at. Now, when it comes to anthropologically identifying real live people and comparing them to other real live people, that's something totally different than what Lois Gibson specializes in. Okay, you know, you're not just drawing what somebody's telling you to draw. It's a very different process. And if Lois Gibson wants to stake her reputation on it, then okay. I wouldn't be willing to do that or go quite that far. Probably because I don't agree with it. And most people I run into, most people have come to the realization, especially after their arrest reports have come to light, and you see the real people, like Harold Doyle in real life, and you can compare the Tramp photos to the way they look now. To me, it's clearly evident, and to a lot of other people as well, that the three Tramps are nothing more than tramps. Okay, Harold Doyle tells the tale that that he was working at a restaurant, he lost his job, he had lost his wife or whatever, and they were just cruising around the country, doing whatever, and they all three, I think, eventually settled in different locations. But it's still a very hotly debated topic in any forum or group. Whenever somebody mentions the Tramps, there's always going to be an argument, because you're always going to have people who claim that, they're these old school people, it's Howard Hunt. There's no doubt about it. Look at the picture. Look at Howard Hunt. It's him. He's there. Because you also have, along with the identification, you have a story. And of course, the Marita Lorenz story, where she says that there was a paymaster named Eduardo, who she knows as Eduardo, that met with Sturgis in a hotel room before the assassination, handed him money, and Lee Harvey Oswald and Jack Ruby were there, and they handed them money, and there was guns, and and everything just kind of feeds into everything else. And what was always interesting to me was the timing that Chauncey Holt came out and said, "Hey, I'm the Tramp, the old Tramp." And of course, this is after Plausible Denial by Mark Lane came out, and it's interesting to me that maybe Chauncey Holt coming out and saying this, and looking somewhat passively like this guy, could have been done to deflect, any heat that was going towards E. Howard Hunt at the time, to try to clear him or clear his name. I don't know. I'm sure Chauncey Holt had ties to the CIA. He could have been told, "Hey man, we need you to come out and say you were this old tramp, blah 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 blah. We need to get some of the heat off of Howard Hunt, and you really look like the guy. You can pull it off. Boom." I don't know. It just always seemed odd to me about the timing of this. But anyway, I don't know where I was going with that. But so another theory that I've been kicking around for some time is, as I said before, these three tramps that were picked up, that were photographed, that were booked and arrested on common vagrancy, I think that's what it is, and robbery, were held for 4 days. They were released on 11/26 of 63. And the Chauncey Holt version says they were led over to the sheriff's office or the police. I think it was the sheriff's office. They were led over there and they were talked to and then immediately turned loose. I believe Chauncey Holt had some kind of identification on him. I know he supposedly said that he brought Secret Service identification badges that he had forged and had left on the seat of a truck or something for some people to get. I'd have to go back and get the details of the story, but something to that effect. That so what he says, they didn't actually go to jail; they were just talked to and released immediately. So what I'm saying is, there's a possibility that there was two sets of tramps. The ones we see photographed, who were Doyle, Abrams, and Jedney. There might have been another set of tramps that was Charles Harrelson, Chauncey Holt, and this Montoya guy, whoever the hell he was, that weren't photographed. I don't know. You know, the chances of it are extremely unlikely. That there would be two sets of tramps they both had comprised of three men who had almost a double quality to them. You know, meaning that they would look so much like the other set of tramps. When I don't know how you could organize like that, something like that ahead of time, or why you would organize something like that ahead of time where you would have three real hobos, and then you would get these Secret Service, or not Secret Service, CIA guys and assassins that look like these real tramps, and you know, just that kind of thinking doesn't make sense either when you really start to parse it out. And then, of course, we have the story of the fourth tramp. And his name is John Elrod. And I'm going to read you a little bit of his arrest report from Dallas on 11/22/63. Now, he was arrested for investigation of murder and common vagrancy. This man was arrested on railroad tracks a few minutes after a radio call was dispatched that man was walking along railroad carrying a rifle. This man was not carrying a rifle at the time of the arrest. This subject is unemployed, states that he has been in Dallas for 2 weeks, lost his job last week at El Phoenix, states he has been arrested for theft and DWI in the past. Now, this arresting officer is M.A. Rhodes and Hellenhausen, I think it is, and Barnard and Hart. And it doesn't have a date of release on the arrest report, but it does have a time. He was arrested at 2:45 p.m. And at the bottom where it says where it should have a release time, it just says, looks like it says gone, whatever that means. And I'm trying to read the time. Yeah, the time on the three tramps, the time of their arrest, it looks to be 4 p.m. Yep, they all say 4 p.m. So, this was quite a long time after, relative to the president's assassination, that the three tramps were photographed tromping through Dealey Plaza and arrested. Although their arrest reports say that they were taken off a train car in the rail yard right after President Kennedy was shot. I mean, I don't know if they weren't booked until 4, but I'm just telling you what the time says on here. They all three say 4 o'clock. And like I said, John Franklin Elrod was arrested at 2:45 p.m. on the railroad tracks. Yeah, Gus Abrams, the old tramp, was 53 years old at the time. He was born in 1910. Okay? And, he looks like he had a rough life. Harold Doyle, by comparison, was born in 1930. He would have been 33 years old at the time, which appears to be about the right age. And John Jedney, the tall tramp, was 38 at the time, born in 1925, looks like. So those are all the ages and everything. But now, John Elrod's story is is an odd one, and it intrigues the hell out of me because this is a guy who didn't go looking for the fame. He didn't write a book. He did not want to be found. Okay, he was found reluctantly by Ray and Mary LaFontaine, the authors of Oswald Talked. Now, in their going through the DPD files, of course, they found the arrest reports for the 3 tramps, but they also found one for this guy, and they tracked him down. He had moved to Tennessee and lived, they said in the piece that he lived on an island, but it was actually somewhere near Memphis. I don't know if there's Memphis Island, somewhere near a river there. I'm not sure. Maybe some of you Tennessee, Doug, help a brother out. Where, I don't know where an island is around there. But anyway, I do know that he moved to Memphis shortly after he left Texas, and he went to the FBI there in Memphis, and he told them, that he had been in Dallas at the time of the assassination, that he was in a cell with Lee Oswald, and they didn't believe him because Dallas said they had no records of arresting this man, and it was pretty much forgotten for almost 30 years until he was tracked down by Ray and Mary LaFontaine, and the story he tells is just insane if it's true. So let's have a listen, and we can listen to John Elrod in his own words. This is a news piece from Hard Copy, and the people interviewing him, you're going to hear Ray and Mary LaFontaine in the piece, and they also talk to John Elrod's brother. So without further ado, let's get right into it. This is about 7.5 minutes long, and I'll be back when it's over.
New clues in the Kennedy assassination tonight. A new book titled Oswald Talked reveals never-before-heard evidence in the case. And some of the revelations come from Lee Harvey Oswald's own cellmate. The Warren Commission never heard from him, and the House Assassination Committee didn't interview him. But John Elrod may be the most important witness yet in the slaying of John F. Kennedy, because on the day the president died, he was thrown into a jail cell with Lee Harvey Oswald. The images are still disturbing, even after all these years. An open motorcade on a sunny Dallas afternoon. A young president and his glamorous first lady. Then tragedy. For 30 years, we've been told the alleged assassin, Lee Harvey Oswald, was a deranged, solitary figure, working alone when he fired a cheap mail-order rifle at the president. For over 3 decades, we've been told that Jack Ruby was also acting alone when he murdered Oswald.
He's been shot. He's been shot.
But that was before we learned about this man's close encounter with Lee Harvey Oswald in the Dallas City jail.
Did he look nervous, or?
I imagine we were all nervous. When you say the word nervous, I say worried.
It was here, on the day the president died, that John Elrod learned about an alleged secret meeting between Lee Harvey Oswald and Jack Ruby. A meeting that happened just days before, involving guns, gangsters, and money. But for the last 33 years, John Elrod has kept that secret. He's been in hiding, afraid to admit what he knows. But with the help of his family, Hard Copy found him on an obscure island. He talked about Dallas. And even after all this time, he was still worried.
See, right now I'm saying things that could really get me in trouble.
It's not going to get you in trouble. You're telling the truth.
Yeah.
And
the truth can get you killed too. You take Oswald. A lot of people think he's innocent. His is dead. He's gone. I could be innocent. I could be gone next week if the wrong thing is said.
And this is the sheriff's letter stating that Elrod came in with him.
The story of John Elrod would still be hidden were it not for Hollywood director Oliver Stone. His movie, JFK, caused such a public outcry that the Dallas police decided to release long-hidden records.
There's been more in the files than I ever thought would be there. There's been several startling revelations that have come out that have not made their way into the mainstream media.
And that's how investigative journalists Ray and Mary LaFontaine discovered Elrod's existence while working on their new book, Oswald Talked. They found long-lost Dallas police files for the afternoon the president was shot. It was about 2:45 p.m. Oswald was already in custody.
I didn't shoot anybody, sir. I haven't been told what I'm here for.
Somebody reported seeing a man with a rifle not far from Ely Plaza. When the police arrived, they spotted John Elrod. He didn't have a gun, but they took him in anyway. They put him in a cell with Oswald. Oswald had been roughed up by the cops.
I can't say for sure, but in my mind, I thought that he was bruised slightly, somewhere around this area in here.
John Elrod's brother, Lindy, remembers what happened next.
He told John, he said, I did not shoot no president. John said, I know I didn't shoot no president. I believe that Oswald told Johnny something, and he just don't want to come out with it. I don't know what happened, really don't know what happened, and probably never will know. But something, to me, put a fright in Johnny.
The most obviously frightening thing that occurred happened in the basement. While millions of TV viewers watched, Lee Harvey Oswald was gunned down by Jack Ruby.
It scared the hell out of me because I knew Jack Ruby.
But something else scared John Elrod too. According to newly discovered documents, Elrod was tormented by what he knew. 9 months after the assassination, he showed up at the sheriff's office in Memphis and said he had information concerning the murder of Lee Oswald. The FBI was called in. He told them that back in the Dallas jail, his cellmate had talked about a motel room meeting where money changed hands. It was some sort of gun deal, and Jack Ruby was at the meeting too. Now, Oswald was never mentioned in the FBI report, but if the story checks out, it is extraordinary because it places Ruby and Oswald together just days before the assassination, something that the Warren Commission, the 1979 House Committee on Assassinations, and 30 years of independent investigations have failed to do. And it appears there really was such a gun-running plot, because just 3 days before Elrod's jailhouse encounter in Dallas, there was a high-speed police chase. 2 ex-cons crashed a car loaded with guns. One of the men worked for Jack Ruby, and at the time, Ruby was suspected of gun running.
The basic facts of the gun deal are true facts from an actual case that the FBI was involved in.
But in 1964, when the Memphis FBI tried to check out John Elrod's story, the Dallas field office said he wasn't even in jail the day JFK died. So the Memphis FBI closed their file. Yet newly discovered police records prove that Elrod was in jail. So the question is, was there a cover-up?
It does indicate that the FBI concealed it and covered it up quickly, that they didn't want any loose ends, and that only conforms to the larger pattern of what Hoover did, J. Edgar Hoover, by closing down any serious investigation.
So what was John Elrod's big secret? Perhaps the biggest secret of all. The knowledge that when Jack Ruby shot Lee Harvey Oswald, he was killing somebody he knew, somebody he wanted to keep quiet. Today, when confronted with the FBI report, John Elrod admits he told the FBI that Oswald was his cellmate, but he says he never told them anything about guns, gangsters, or Ruby.
Well, what did you tell him?
I just told him I was arrested for the murder down there, and I was in the cell with Oswald, and that was it.
We try to reassure him, try to tell him that the more people who know the truth, the safer he will be. But he does not believe us. Whatever else he knows, our secrets, he may take to his grave.
If he tried to tell it and nobody listened, it probably will never tell it again.
Despite repeated requests for an interview, the FBI declined to comment on our report.
Big shocker there, right? Now, you heard in that little piece what the crux of Elrod's story was. This guy, Donnell Witter, worked for Jack Ruby. They were running guns. And as one of the footnotes in Oswald Talks, states, a FOIA response from the National Archives to researcher Bill Adams in October 93 noted that the Witter information cannot be released for the following FBI-directed reason. The public disclosure of the assassination record would reveal a security or protective procedure currently utilized or reasonably expected to be utilized by the Secret Service or another government agency responsible for protecting government officials, and public disclosure would be so harmful that it outweighs the public interest. So, well, it goes on to say, in 1994, following publication of the author's Washington Post article that spawned this book called The Fourth Tramp, Oswald's Lost Cellmate, and the Gunrunners of Dallas, FBI headquarters finally released the 14-page Witter document. So, yeah, I mean, the guy had a rap sheet like as long as your arm. Now, what's interesting is also not alluded to in that little piece there, but you know, part of Elrod's story is tied in with a bust, of course, of Witter and Miller, who were these gun runners, and they were associated with John Thomas Mason, who's been alleged in the lore. He was a gun store owner. He was one of the few that carried Manley Carcano ammunition, and also could possibly have been an Oswald double, as alleged by some. Now, ATF agent Frank Ellsworth, discussed the arrest of an arms dealer, John Thomas Mason, in Dallas, and indicated that the dealer is a member of the Minutemen and may be associated with the John Birch Society. He indicated that he furnished this information to the Bureau. The Bureau did nothing with the information, as you'll see in Chapter 10. Now, this is interesting because, as we've been talking about, you know, when it comes to who was behind this thing and what possible links, you know, that these extreme right-wing guys would have to people like Jack Ruby and Lee Oswald in Dallas. You know, you come to find out that many of these people there were involved in these organizations. The Birchers, the Klan, the Minutemen, many of them were cops as well. In fact, one of the cops marching these guys through Dealey Plaza has a Ku Klux Klan patch on the arm of his Dallas police uniform. So, you know, take that with what you will. You know, I'm not sure what else, you know, we can say about these tramps other than you got to make up your own mind, people. Look at the pictures yourself. Think about the evidence and what makes sense. Okay? We have stories. We have unfounded allegations. And then we have actual arrest reports. We have actual people that look like the people that were paraded through Dealey Plaza. Harold Doyle, Gus Abrams, and John Jedney. Look at the photographs for yourself. Make up your own mind. Yes, Holt and Hunt look like the old tramp, vaguely. Okay, but not exactly. And to have a positive identification, we need exactly. Okay? And we also need some evidence. And at least we have the arrest report for Doyle, Jedney, and Abrams. We have allegations of Hunt being in Dallas. That's all we have. No substantiated evidence of it whatsoever, other than the testimony of Marita Lorenz and allegations. We have Chauncey Holt, who tells a nice story, but we have absolutely no proof whatsoever, okay, that they were there. And another thing that struck me as odd when he told his little story there in that news piece, that Harrelson came up to him and said, "Yeah, you're O'Malley, right?" Using a fake name. And that Harrelson told him, "Well, I'm Harrelson," using his real name. So that doesn't really make sense. Okay, why would Chauncey Holt, use a fake name, and Harrelson's just, hi, I'm Charles Harrelson. You can just call me Harrelson. So, you know, you take a sniff test on these things, and, you know, they got to go in that category. If without any evidence, you got to put them over in the James Files, Judy Baker, you know, and this whole crew of people with great stories, but no evidence whatsoever to back them up. I wish it wasn't like that, but unfortunately, it is. But anyway, head over to tlgpodcast.com. Look for yourself. See the pictures yourself. Let me know what you think. I want to hear about it, and you know, don't just buy into whatever supports your little theory. If the CIA was behind it, then it was Hunt or Holt, you know, or if you're from the cuckoo camp, you know, where you got Charles Harrelson down here, and you got you know, Lloyd Factor and you know, all these other crazy things going on, Roderick McKenzie. Stick to what we can prove and what the documents are telling us and what your eyes tell you. You really have to learn and develop these skills of cognitive identification. Look at the eyes. Look at the mouth. Look at the nose. Look at the ears. Look at the jawline. Look at the brow. Not just a resemblance. We need a positive identification. And it's very hard to do from photographs alone. But, you know, it's possible. But anyway, that's it for this week, people. And coming up next week on the show, I'm going to have Carmine Salvestano swing by. And we're going to get into more about debunking E. Howard Hunt and Frank Sturgis when it comes to the Kennedy assassination and why we like to put them there. So make sure you tune in for that. And thank you everyone that's been supporting the show and sharing the show. And if you listen on iTunes, please help me out and give me a 5-star rating. Leave a little review. I don't care if it's good or bad. Hopefully good. But it helps out. It gets more eyes on the show. The more you leave a positive review or a review, period. And I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you, everybody that's been following me on Spreaker, who's been sharing links to the show on social media. I appreciate it. Make sure you're checking out the Dallas Action over on Spreaker. And my buddy Chuck Ocelli on American Freedom Radio. And I guess that's it, people. The sumbitch is in the can, beaming up the satellite down directly to your ears. This is your boy. Peace.
You stood behind the counter. I walked up, keeping my head down. Something had moved.